Prince Louis is rapidly becoming the favorite royal of all. No one can resist his charming smile. Queen Camilla is taking some time off after stepping in for King Charles III amid his cancer diagnosis. Prince Louis shocked everyone on live television by taking the microphone and leaving Queen Camilla clearly upset. It wasn't just a funny moment, it was a bold move that turned a serious royal event into chaos in front of an audience expecting perfect manners. The young prince's action shocked everyone. Social media exploded with people both applauding and criticizing what happened. Tune in to see what fallout it had on a somewhat royal and very peculiar family. Chandeliers, crowns, and chaos. It was at a significant public event, the kind with glittering gowns, tailored suits, and the kind of atmosphere that screams, "Don't mess up." Yet there Louis was, a child who couldn't care less about royal protocol. The 6-year-old decided the microphone was his to claim, and boy did he take command. With a mix of innocent boldness and sheer comedic timing, Louis became the star no one expected, overshadowing even his grandmother, Queen Camilla, in a moment that left everyone, royals and commoners alike, gaping. Little did they know, the most shocking part of the evening was yet to come. The setting was as grand as you'd imagine. Golden chandeliers hung from towering ceilings, casting a soft glow over a sea of polished faces. Rows of impeccably dressed attendees sat in silence, their attention riveted on the grand proceedings. But it was young Louis who breathed life into the otherwise stuffy affair. His impromptu grab for the microphone was not just a child's whimsy, it was a moment that seemed to strip away the layers of tradition and protocol, leaving behind something raw and, yes, a bit chaotic. What made this moment even more memorable was the sheer shock it brought to the meticulously choreographed event. The royal family, masters of keeping their cool, couldn't hide their reaction. A collective ripple of disbelief and laughter spread through the room. Camilla, known for her poise, appeared momentarily flustered, and who could blame her? Having a 6-year-old steal your thunder isn't exactly in the royal playbook. As the cameras captured the scene, social media erupted. Memes of Louis's bold microphone grab flooded the internet. Some praised his audacity, calling him a breath of fresh air in an otherwise rigid institution. Others, however, couldn't help but cringe, seeing the moment as a lack of discipline or control. But isn't that the charm of it? In a world where every royal move is scrutinized, here was a child simply being a child. Louis's antics didn't just steal the show, they overshadowed an event that was meant to highlight the monarchy's unity and tradition. Perhaps that's why this moment resonated so strongly with the public. It was a reminder that beneath the crowns and titles, these are real people, and yes, their kids can be just as unpredictable as anyone else's. This isn't the first time Louis has brought a touch of chaos to royal events. His history of cheeky behavior during significant occasions is well documented. Who can forget his dramatic expressions during the Trooping the Color parade, or the time he couldn't resist pulling faces at his siblings during a public appearance? Each of these moments has cemented his reputation as the family's wild card, the one who isn't afraid to break from the script. While these antics make for entertaining headlines, they also raise questions about the evolving role of the monarchy in modern times. Louis, with his unfiltered behavior, symbolizes a departure from the stiff upper lip that has long defined the royal family. His moments of spontaneity serve as a reminder that perhaps the monarchy doesn't need to be as formal as it once was. Some might argue that moments like these undermine the dignity of royal events, but others see them as a necessary evolution. The monarchy, after all, thrives on public support, and what better way to connect with the people than through moments of authenticity? Louis's antics bring a sense of relatability to the royal family, making them seem less like untouchable figures and more like, well, a family. The question now is how the palace will handle Louis's growing penchant for stealing the show. Will they try to rein him in, or will they embrace his natural charisma? Either way, it's clear that Prince Louis is carving out a unique place for himself in the royal narrative, one cheeky microphone grab at a time. The fascination with Prince Louis and his antics is not just fleeting amusement, it's part of a larger conversation about what it means to be a modern royal. Historically, the monarchy has thrived on a delicate balance of tradition and adaptation. Prince Louis, in his own innocent way, embodies this balance. His ability to disrupt formal events with playful behavior might seem trivial on the surface, but it holds a mirror to a family navigating its place in a changing world. consider the setting of this most recent event, a grand and opulent affair meant to showcase unity and grace. The golden-lit halls, the rows of dignitaries, the carefully curated program, all designed to convey the timeless elegance of the royal family. Yet, in one swift moment, Louis turned that script upside down. His boldness, his lack of concern for protocol, became a symbol of something far more profound, the human side of royalty. Louis's charm lies in his unpredictability. While his older siblings, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, have already shown a knack for adhering to royal decorum, Louis seems to delight in breaking the mold. At events like Trooping the Colour, George and Charlotte are often seen sitting politely, their faces composed, their gestures measured. Then there is Louis, waving wildly at the crowd, pulling faces, and even gesturing to the planes overhead as though they are there solely for his amusement. His behavior might seem irreverent, but it's also endearing. It reminds the public that even in the world of tiaras and titles, there is room for spontaneity. Louis is not burdened by the weight of the crown in the same way his brother George is, and perhaps that's why his antics resonate so deeply. He is a glimpse of childhood innocence in a world often criticized for its rigidity. The public's response to Louis's behavior is telling. While some might cluck their tongues and lament the loss of decorum, many see him as a refreshing departure from the norm. Social media, always quick to amplify moments like these, has turned him into a viral sensation. Memes and videos of Louis's antics spread like wildfire, drawing comments that range from amused to adoring. What does this say about the royal family's place in contemporary culture? For one, it highlights the growing demand for authenticity. In an age where public figures are often seen as distant and out of touch, Louis's unfiltered moments bring a sense of realness to the monarchy. Serve as a reminder that even royals are human. His behavior bridges the gap between the monarchy and the public, making the family more relatable to the average person. This relatability is crucial as the royal family seeks to remain relevant. The days when the monarchy could exist as an untouchable institution are long gone. Today, public support is vital, and that support is often built on moments of connection. Louis' antics, while seemingly minor, contribute to this connection in a meaningful way. Of course, not everyone is charmed by Louis' behavior. Critics argue that his antics undermine the dignity of royal events. They point to moments like his dramatic expressions during the Platinum Jubilee as examples of a lack of discipline. But even these criticisms speak to the evolving nature of the monarchy. For centuries, the royal family has been a symbol of tradition and stability. Now, it is also becoming a symbol of adaptability and change. As Louis' antics fade, the story turns to the ancient roots of the monarchy, the birth of Britain's crowns. The British monarchy's tangled web of history begins long before the modern royals we know today. To get a grip on it, let us start with Alfred the Great of England and Kenneth MacAlpin of Scotland, names that pop up often in this sprawling narrative. These two rulers set the foundations for what we now recognize as the United Kingdom, but the story of their descendants and the crowns they wore is anything but straightforward. Back in Alfred's time, England was more of a messy patchwork of smaller kingdoms like Wessex, Northumbria, and Mercia. These regions were carved out by Anglo-Saxon settlers after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Alfred, originally the ruler of Wessex, found himself in a tough spot as Viking invaders made their way onto English soil. Faced with this existential threat, he pulled off a unification act, bringing together these Anglo-Saxon territories under one banner. By the time his grandson, Athelstan, ruled, this kingdom had a name, England. Meanwhile, north of the border, Scotland was having its own mix-and-match moment. What we call Scotland today was once a scattering of kingdoms like the Picts and Dalriata. Kenneth MacAlpin is credited with conquering the Picts and merging these lands, starting the process of unifying Scotland. By the time his grandson Constantine II ruled, this new kingdom, called Alba, was beginning to resemble modern Scotland in its early years. The Scottish throne bounced between family branches until a man named Duncan from the House of Dunkeld finally solidified his claim around 1034. Even then, his reign was not without drama, as evidenced by Macbeth's famous takeover, a story later twisted into Shakespearean legend. Heading back to England, Athelstan's legacy continued, but not without hiccups. Succession crises and assassinations peppered the timeline. Edward the Martyr's brief rule ended with his death, only to be followed by Ethelred the Unready. Now, do not let the nickname fool you. Unready really meant ill-advised. His reign fed chaos when Sven Forkbeard, a Danish king, invaded and took the English throne in 1013. This interruption did not last long, as Sven's death led to Ethelred's brief return, but not for long. Ethelred's son, Edmund Ironside, inherited the throne, only to lose it to Sven's son, Knut. Knut's rule marked the North Sea Empire's zenith, spanning Denmark, Norway, and England. The Danish period ended when Edward the Confessor, half English and half Norman, ascended the throne. But Edward's childlessness threw England into yet another succession battle. Harold Godwin's son and William of Normandy both claimed the throne, with William ultimately winning at the famous Battle of Hastings in 1066. This victory earned him the moniker William the Conqueror and marked the start of Norman rule in England. William's descendants, including Henry I, faced their own share of turmoil, including the White Ship disaster, which killed Henry's heir and led to a contested succession between Matilda and Stephen, a period aptly named the Anarchy. From the chaos emerged the Plantagenet dynasty in 1154, beginning with Henry II. His marriage to Eleanor of Aquitaine brought immense power, uniting English and French territories under one crown. This Angevin empire, however, was more ambitious than practical, and conflicts with France soon followed. Henry's descendants, including Richard the Lionheart and King John, added to the drama. John's reign is notorious for the Magna Carta, which limited royal power and laid the groundwork for constitutional monarchy. By this time, England had also extended its reach into Ireland, though the Irish kingdoms resisted full control. The Plantagenets ruled for centuries, but their line was not free of disputes. Edward III's claim to the French throne led to the 100 Years' War, a series of battles that ended with England losing most of its continental possessions. Meanwhile, back home, the Wars of the Roses erupted, a civil war between the York and Lancaster branches of the Plantagenet family. White roses symbolized York, while red roses represented Lancaster, and the battles tore the country apart. Edward IV of York eventually took control. The throne was succeeded by his young son Edward I, who mysteriously disappeared. His uncle, Richard III, took the crown but was defeated by Henry Tudor at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. Henry Tudor, or Henry VII, started the Tudor dynasty, bringing an end to the Wars of the Roses by marrying Elizabeth of York, effectively uniting the two warring houses. With the kingdom shaped, Henry VII's lineage brought new twists to history: 6 wives, 2 queens, and a new kingdom. When Henry grabbed the crown as Henry VIII, he married the sister of those infamous princes in the Tower. The result? Their son, Henry VII, became a mix of the Yorkist and Lancastrian bloodlines, Yorkist from his mother, Lancastrian from his father. But hold on, there is a spicy theory floating around that Elizabeth of York, and by extension her kids, were illegitimate. This wild claim even links to some guy in Australia who supposedly should have been king instead. Imagine that. Speaking of Henry VIII, he is easily one of England's most talked about rulers. He slapped on the title, King of Ireland, but let's be honest, he is mainly remembered for juggling 6 wives. His first wife, Catherine of Aragon, was once married to his late brother Arthur. She was a Spanish princess, daughter of the famed Ferdinand and Isabella. Despite giving Henry a daughter, Mary, there was no male heir, so Henry wanted out of the marriage. His solution? Break up with the Pope and the Catholic Church entirely. Yes, that is how the Church of England got started. Next up, Anne Boleyn. She gave him Elizabeth but lost her head, literally, a few years later over accusations of treason and infidelity. Jane Seymour followed, finally delivering the longed-for son, Edward, but she did not survive childbirth. Then came Anne of Cleves, who did not stick around long because Henry annulled that one too. Catherine Howard, wife number 5, ended up executed like Anne Boleyn. Finally, Catherine Parr swooped in as wife 6 and managed to outlive him. Talk about drama. After Henry VIII's death, things got even messier. His precious son, Edward VI, became king but died at only 15. Edward had tried to name his cousin, Lady Jane Grey, as his successor, but her reign barely lasted over a week before she was ousted by Mary I, Henry's eldest daughter. Mary married her cousin Philip, future King of Spain, which briefly united the two crowns. However, she died childless, leaving her sister, Elizabeth, to rule. Elizabeth I's reign ushered in the famous Elizabethan age, where Shakespeare thrived and England sparkled in the arts and literature. Yet, up in Scotland, things were not exactly dull. The Scottish throne went to the House of Stuart after David II's death. Several kings named James ruled until James V's daughter, Mary Queen of Scots, became a major player. Meanwhile, England got its first female rulers, Mary I, also known as Bloody Mary, and Elizabeth I. Mary of Scotland clashed with Elizabeth of England until Elizabeth had her executed. Mary's son, James VI of Scotland, eventually inherited Elizabeth's throne, uniting the two kingdoms. Elizabeth I famously remained single, earning the nickname, the Virgin Queen. With no children, the crown passed to James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England. Though Henry VIII had tried to steer the succession through his sister Mary's descendants, James's claim came through his other sister, Margaret, and nobody seemed to care much about Henry's wishes by then. This marked the start of the Stuart dynasty in both England and Scotland. James's son, Charles I, was not exactly a crowd favourite. He believed kings could do whatever they wanted, which did not sit well with Parliament. This conflict turned into a full-blown civil war, ending with Charles's execution. For about a decade, Britain became a republic under Oliver Cromwell. But after Cromwell's death, the monarchy returned with Charles II, followed by his brother James II. James II's Catholicism became a huge issue, especially when he had a son who was likely to stay Catholic. Protestant nobles invited his daughter Mary and her husband, William of Orange, to take the throne instead. Known as the Glorious Revolution, this move sent James fleeing to France while Mary and William ruled jointly. Their childless reign shifted the crown to Mary's sister, Anne. Anne's story brought even more chaos. She had a son, but he died young, prompting England and Scotland to officially merge as Great Britain, barring Catholics from inheriting the throne and picking a distant Protestant relative, Sophia of the Palatinate, as Anne's successor. Sophia died before Anne, so the crown went to Sophia's son, George I. George I, the first monarch of the House of Hanover, was not the most beloved due to his German roots and shaky English. Jacobites, supporters of James II's descendants, tried to restore a Stuart to the throne but failed. George II succeeded him and faced similar challenges. Then came George III, who lost the American colonies and was nicknamed Mad King George for his mental health struggles. During his reign, Great Britain formally united with Ireland, creating the United Kingdom. George IV followed but left no heir, passing the crown to his brother, William IV. William's niece, Victoria, became queen after him. Queen Victoria's long reign defined an era, overseeing the British Empire at its zenith. She married her cousin Albert, and their lineage shaped European royalty for generations. The royal house's German connections became awkward during the First World War, prompting George V to rename it Windsor. His son, Edward VIII, abdicated to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee, leaving his brother George VI as king. George VI's reign saw the empire shrink as colonies gained independence. His daughter, Elizabeth II, became Britain's longest-reigning monarch, with her son Charles now ruling as Charles III. As the British monarchy changes, should it keep old traditions or adapt to fit today's world?